saying, and if that's problematic. So we see here in this passage, they're discussing laws pertaining to a 3-year-old girl who has been, again, let's use appropriate words here that we can use on YouTube, for example, a 3-year-old girl that is abused by an older man. Well,
Shalom, my friends, and welcome to another video where we are exploring Ash Maze's take on the infamous Talmudic passage. I made a video on this as well before, where people discuss this 3-year-old girl scenario, and believe it or not, Ash Maze made what is closest to a Kiddush Hashem that I have seen him do since his coming out as a Christian or flirting with the idea of becoming a Christian. I think he's full blown went all in at this point. But anyway, let's keep listening to his take.
The rabbis aren't condemning it. It's right there, and they're not condemning it, okay? But this is not what's up for discussion. They're talking about whether or not she is considered a virgin for her marital status. They're not talking about whether or not it's okay for a man to do that. In fact, that would already be considered not okay elsewhere in Jewish law. They're not discussing it here.
So this is really a powerful point that I didn't exactly take that. So this is the video that I did, and he's critiquing this the barbarian guy. If you guys are familiar with his videos, he's very anti-Jewish. I made another video here. Born Again Barbarian, I believe is his name. So yeah, he's obviously no friend of the Jews. So this video, why am I making this video today? I wanted to explore Ash Maze as an individual, very curious individual, because he fits into that sort of category that is the biggest fear of the counter-missionary world. Somebody who supposedly has an Orthodox background who becomes a Christian. Somebody who grew up Jewish and became Christian. Obviously, this is problematic from a counter-missionary point of view, from a traditional Jewish point of view. What would cause somebody like Ash Maze to get to this point? And a lot of people will tell me that he never was at this point. There's so many people in my comment section that are asking me, is Ash Maze really a Jew? Did he really grow up Orthodox? There has to be something more to the story. And I think based on this video, the way that he presents information, I don't think there's any denying that he grew up as a Jew. He understands, to whatever degree, you want to say, he understands basic knowledge of the Talmud enough for me to be convinced, based on the way he presents information in this video, that he does know what he's talking about. What's interesting, though, is that despite the fact, now, I'm not here endorsing him, right? Because he's not obviously, promoting Judaism in a way that I agree with. So I'm not promoting the material. But, you have this broken clock is right twice a day philosophy. And I think in this case, he makes a very compelling case for why the way that, people like Born Again Barbarian and all these people who are trying to accuse, the Talmud of saying all these horrible things, he's demonstrating that this is not the case. So I'll play a little more of the clip. And guys, please like, share, and subscribe just to keep what we have going. We got a good thing going on here, so let's keep the momentum going to spread the truth of Torah and be an Or L'Goyim, and to fellow Jews who fall prey to the Avodah Zarah of Christianity.
For example, if we take that context and translate it into a modern court setting, let's say a woman is abused. Again, let's use that word so that we don't get a problem on YouTube. And the man who did that to her has been convicted and sentenced in criminal court. But now she's suing him in civil court as well. And in this court discussion, they're discussing how much this man ought to pay her in damages. Well, if you look at the transcript from that court case, from that civil proceeding, it's going to be discussing the fact that he abused her. It's going to be discussing what he did. And it's going to be discussing the monetary value that he owes her. You're not necessarily going to see anything that's criminally condemning him. And if you read that, you go, well, they're discussing this man abusing a woman, and all they're talking about is money, and they're not talking about how evil and vile it is what he did to her. Well, it's already been discussed. It's already been discussed. It's already been taken care of in criminal court. He's already been convicted and sentenced. What they're discussing is how much the woman is owed.
So you see, Ash Mays is demonstrating knowledge that the Talmud speaks about cases in different places, and he does a very good job summarizing what the Talmud is and how it is, what people think it is versus what it's not. He explains it's not scripture, which it's not, and a lot of people, when they have these types of discussions, will act in bad faith and try to, when I will have a discussion with Christians constantly, they bring up the Talmud and try to make me side with one particular minority opinion that they found and assume that that is the equivalent to me quoting from Matthew chapter 1 verse 8 or something, and whatever, like any verse in the New Testament. It's not viewed in the same way, and it's comparing apples to oranges, and unfortunately I see a lot of doublespeak from Christians on this. Look, when Ash Mays and I have theological discussions about Christianity versus Judaism, I wish he would be able to apply this same principle there, is what I'm getting at. He clearly knows what's going on in terms of how the Talmud is, understood. And you can also go to this website, of course. This is probably the more famous ones. It's a little bit old school, but it's a great resource for all of the, things, the lies that people tell about the Talmud. And, it has, the idea that Gentiles would be considered to be subhuman, that lie that's spread, or that, that they would be animals, or that if it condones stealing from Gentiles. So this is the Gill student website, talmudfaith.web, talmud.faithweb.com. Little tongue twister, but yeah. And it goes through all of the different things that, anti-Jewish hate mongers like to throw around and say about the Talmud. And you can also watch my video. I do a slightly different take on, that this was and I go through all the sources in the Talmud, and I make an argument similar to what he's making, but honestly, I really like Ash Mays' take here, where he shows that there is a positive take on here, that actually the life of the victim in this case is, or the survivor of the abuse, is actually protected because of what was ruled here. And Ash Mays explains that well in this video. I'll play a little bit more of it so you can hear.
So let's go back to the topic in the Talmud that's being discussed. So a man has abused a 3-year-old girl, and what are they discussing? Well, this is not talking about criminal proceedings or what happens to this man and so on. This is talking about monetary value as relates to the girl's status for marriage. So if we actually look at the context, the Talmud earlier on in this discussion brings up these 3 categories. A woman who has relations with a young boy, a woman who's lost her virginity, let's call it being injured by a stick. That's how it's translated in modern translations of the Talmud, and a 3-year-old girl who is abused by a man. Well, there's various rabbis discussing whether or not, for marital purposes, these categories would be considered virgins or not for their marital status, and what their status would be for marriage in their marriage contract. There are opinions being brought up that takes down their status, that demeans their status, and says they're worth less for marriage because they are no longer virgins. But what the rabbi in this place is discussing, he's actually saying, no, wait a second. In this particular case, this is not a case where a woman has gone out and had premarital relations or has done something that has caused her to be in that status of her own volition. In this case, this 3-year-old girl, one, it was not her doing that caused this situation, it was done to her. And two, by the time she gets to marital age, for the purpose of this discussion, he's saying we should treat it as though she is still a virgin. So when he says it's like she got poked in the eye or nothing happened, what he's saying is that for marital purposes, we don't treat her the same as we treat a woman who has voluntarily had premarital relations, or a divorced woman, or somebody who is not a virgin for the purposes of status as relates to marriage contracts. They're talking about a girl where this has been done to her. And so what the rabbi here is saying in this particular discussion, and again, there are problematic passages in the Talmud, I'm not saying that there aren't, but in this particular case, which is one of the most demonized, the rabbi here is actually elevating the status of the girl for the purposes of her marriage contract later in life, so that she is protected and can derive greater monetary value from her marriage later in life. Again, you might think this whole discussion is backwards, but again, we're talking about the 4th century or the.
So honestly, this was a really good way, like a brilliant way of describing this. This is what's happening, and I think Ash Mays deserves credit for developing a very cohesive presentation of why this Talmudic passage that is so frequently taken out of context to try to say the most horrible things about Jews, I think he did a wonderful job explaining it. Does that amount to him, me endorsing his, channel? Not so much, because I wish he was able to apply this same, brilliance to the rest of what he discusses regarding theological claims, regarding the Talmud. Unfortunately, I don't think he's there yet, but clearly he has potential to do that. And this goes back to the question, people ask me on the channel all the time, Yehuda, why would somebody Christian, go off the derech? Like, why would somebody turn into a Christian, basically? Why would somebody who grew up Jewish, an Orthodox Jew, how could we even fathom this happening, right? I mean, we have people like Dr. Michael Brown, who it's fascinating because, he, at one point, he didn't grow up Orthodox, but, he grew up Jewish, conservative, or whatever he was. And he turned out to become this, one of the most prominent missionaries in the world, for better or for, at this point, for worse. But in a sense, what's the positive, aspect of this? Obviously, it's a shanda that he went that direction, but was there anything positive about it? And I think there was. There's a silver lining to Dr. Brown's trajectory, because he is, and you can see on my channel, there's a lot of religious Zionist, theology going on here. And I think that's important because a lot of people, you can flip a coin, right? If you read the New Testament, you could end up becoming, a Pastor Hagee type, Zionist, whatever, or you could become a Candace Owens, Mel Gibson, Jewish hate monger. That's the way the New Testament, because it's so contradictory in how it views Jews. You have these passages like Revelation, 2:9 and 3:9, and then you have passages, like, or even Jesus saying things like, in John, 8:44, talking about synagogue of Satan and being of your father, the devil, right? It shouldn't be a secret why Christians are so against Jews and wanting to call the Talmud satanic and all these horrible things. But then you have other Christians who read whatever the book of Romans or whatever the parts of the New Testament that talk about the preserved branches and say a lot of positive but sort of backhanded compliments to the Jews, right? And those are the types of people that, you know, I don't know exactly what direction Ash Mays is going with that, but certainly Dr. Michael Brown has a soft spot for that. And that's why you see him going up against people like the Black Hebrew Israelites, going against the Sakari movement, right? I did a video maybe a few years ago on that, year or two ago. And man, like seeing a lot of these people who, are Christian but Jewish, do it, speaking up for Israel, speaking up for the Jewish people, they get more platforms to do that, even though their message is a little tainted, right? I did a little debate with this Sakari Hebrew Israelite. Dr. Michael Brown debated the head of the Sakari movement. Guess what? The Sakari movement is no more. The Sakari movement has imploded on itself. Dr. Michael Brown also is a far cry from what he used to be. The world has a way of taking care of itself. Hashem has developed the world in a way where even when people go off the derech, sometimes they bring an interesting light in a way that they didn't intend on doing. And I think that's the case here with Ash Mays. He's a curious case. I think he's going, I don't know exactly what he's going through. Obviously, I'm always open to dialogue and discussion. But that's my take on him. I think he's authentically from a background of religious Judaism. I don't question that. Why he decided to become a Christian after knowing what he knows, I don't know. But at the very least, I've seen him on, the Apologetics Roadshow and with the Apostate Prophet and those individuals. So he's getting a platform, for better or for worse. You see he has a significant amount of subscribers in a short period of time. The internet loves this stuff. People love to see Jews turning into Christians. It's a quick buck, okay? So whatever his intentions are, if it's, whatever, I don't know. But what I do know is that there is potential here. There's always a way to bring, even Dr. Michael Brown, he could come back to the light after all of the trials and tribulations he put himself through, right? So I'm hoping the same for Ash Mays. So that's my take on him. So if you guys are asking in the comments whether or not he's authentically Orthodox, yeah. If you're asking me whether or not I agree with his position, of course not. I don't believe in Christianity. And I long for the day when Ash Mays and Dr. Brown and all of these people who have unfortunately fallen for the falsehood of Christianity will see the error of their ways and come back to the truth of Torah. So everyone, please like, share, and subscribe and help spread this message of truth to the masses. I hope this video has been a blessing to you all. Shalom Aleichem.